The marketplace smelled like 100 different worlds all crammed into one long corridor. Vendors shouted in languages that clicked, hummed, and whistled. Smoke from food stalls mixed with the sharp scent of alien spices. Children of a dozen species chased each other between the booths while their parents haggled over prices. Sam Rodriguez loved the chaos. He wove through the crowd with practiced ease, his small size letting him slip past the adults who barely noticed him. His parents were 3 levels down in the engineering bay, fixing a broken cooling system. They thought he was doing homework in their quarters. He would be later. Probably. The crowd thinned suddenly. Sam stumbled into an open space near the fountain plaza. Everyone had moved to the edges, pressed against the walls and storefronts. Their voices dropped to whispers. Then Sam saw wide-eyed a figure walked alone down the center of the corridor. He was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with dark gray skin that looked like it had been carved from stone. His arms were thick with muscle, and strange ridges ran along his shoulders and spine. He wore simple clothes, dark pants, and a sleeveless shirt that showed the powerful build beneath. Metal bands circled his wrists, blinking with tiny red lights. Riven. Everyone on the station knew that name. Sam had seen him before, always from a distance. Always walking alone. Always surrounded by empty space as people scrambled to get away. The alien moved with careful steps, keeping to a painted yellow line on the floor. His head turned slowly from side to side, watching the crowds that watched him back. Sam noticed something in those eyes. They were dark and sharp, but there was something else there too. Something that looked almost sad that a Centauran family backed away so fast that the father knocked over a display of fruit. The vendor did not complain. Nobody complained when Riven walked by. Sam had heard the stories. Kravik were killers. Touch one and you died. Their skin secreted poison. Their spines could extend like knives. They were bred for war and death. Riven had killed 40 enemy soldiers during the border wars. 40. And now he lived here, a prisoner in everything but name, walking his designated paths while everyone else lived their lives around him like water, flowing around stone. Don't stare, a woman hissed, pulling her child close. Just let him pass. But Sam could not look away. He watched as Riven reached the end of the marketplace and turned down another corridor. The moment he disappeared, the crowd surged back to life. Voices rose again. Vendors called out their deals. Children resumed their games. IT was like he had never been there at all. Sam made his way to the observation deck later that evening. The huge windows showed the black of space dotted with distant stars. A gas giant filled half the view, its storms swirling in bands of orange and brown. Ships came and went like fireflies, their engines leaving brief trails of light. Only 2 other people were in the deck. They sat at the far end, talking quietly. They did not notice Sam slip in and find a spot by the window. Then the door opened again. Riven entered. The couple at the far end grabbed their things and left immediately, not even trying to hide their rush to escape. The door closed behind them. Now, it was just Sam and the Kravik. Riven walked to the opposite side of the deck and sat on one of the benches bolted to the floor. The bench creaked under his weight. He stared out at the stars with that same expression Sam had seen in the marketplace. Lonely. That was the word. He looked lonely. Sam stayed very still. His parents had warned him 100 times to stay away from the Kravik. Everyone had. The teachers, the security officers, even the other kids. One touch and you die, they said. Stay 20 meters back at minimum. Never approach. Never speak to him. But Sam watched, and all he saw was someone sitting alone that Riven's shoulders rose and fell with a deep breath. His hands rested on his knees, the metal bands on his wrists blinking their steady red rhythm. Those hands were huge, with thick fingers that ended in dark nails. Dangerous hands. Killing hands, if the stories were true. Minutes passed. Neither of them moved. That the ship drifted past the window, close enough that Sam could see the lights in its tiny windows. Riven watched it go with an expression that might have been yearning. Did he want to be on that ship? Did he want to be anywhere but here? Sam's comm device buzzed. A message from his mom. Dinner in 20 minutes. Time to head back. That he stood slowly, trying not to make noise. Riven's head turned slightly, not looking directly at Sam, but aware. Always aware, Sam walked to the door. His hand touched the control panel. "Be safe, small one," a voice said, deep and rough like gravel shifting. "These corridors can be dangerous." Sam froze. He turned back. Riven was still looking at the stars, not at him. But he had spoken. Actually spoken. "Thank you," Sam said quietly. Riven nodded once. Just a slight dip of his head. Sam left the observation deck with his heart hammering. Not from fear. From something else. Something like wonder. That night, lying in his bed, Sam thought about those eyes. About the empty space that followed Riven wherever he went. About a voice that sounded tired and careful, warning a kid to be safe even though everyone said the Kravik himself was the danger. Nobody touched him. Nobody spoke to him. Nobody saw him as anything but a monster in metal restraints. But Sam had seen something different. He just did not know what it meant yet. The alarm was different from the usual station sounds. It was sharp and urgent, cutting through the normal hum of machinery and air systems. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Sam dropped his datapad and ran to the door of his family's quarters. His parents were already gone, called to engineering the moment the emergency started. They would be working to fix whatever had broken. That was their job. The corridor outside was chaos. People ran in both directions, some heading for emergency shelters, others rushing toward their duty stations. A voice came over the station speakers, calm but firm. "Coolant leak in sections 12 through 15. All personnel evacuate immediately." This is not a drill. Sam knew he should go to the nearest shelter. That was the rule. But section 14 was where he had left his jacket yesterday, down in the maintenance tunnels where he liked to explore. His dad's old jacket, the one with the Earth flag patch. The one his grandmother had sewn by hand. The crowd pushed past him. Nobody noticed one kid slipping away in the wrong direction. The lower levels were quieter. Most people avoided the maintenance areas even on normal days. The tunnels were narrow, filled with pipes and conduits that carried power and water and air throughout the station. Sam had mapped them in his head over months of careful exploration. He found his jacket hanging on a valve where he had left it. The fabric was warm in his hands. He smiled and turned to leave. That was when the world shook. The explosion was not loud. It was more like a deep thump that Sam felt in his chest. The lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency strips that barely pushed back the darkness. Then came the hissing sound that a pipe had burst somewhere close. Sam could hear the spray of escaping coolant, and already the air smelled wrong. Chemical and sharp, burning his nose and throat. He ran back the way he had come, but the tunnel was different now. Something had collapsed. Metal beams lay across the path, blocking the exit. Sam tried to squeeze through, but his foot slipped. A heavy support beam shifted and fell. Pain shot through his leg as the beam pinned him to the floor. He tried to pull free, but it was too heavy, far too heavy. The hissing grew louder. White vapor began to fill the tunnel, cold and toxic. Sam screamed for help. His voice echoed off the metal walls and died in the vapor. Nobody would hear him down here. Nobody even knew he was here. The cold crept into his lungs. Each breath felt like swallowing glass. His head grew light and fuzzy. The emergency lights looked like they were getting dimmer, but maybe that was just his eyes failing that he was going to die here. Alone in the dark. Heavy footsteps echoed down the tunnel. Slow and careful, but coming closer that a shape moved through the vapor. Huge and dark, pushing through the toxic cloud like it was nothing more than morning fog. Riven. The Kravik crouched beside the fallen beam, his dark eyes finding Sam in the gloom. He did not speak. His hands wrapped around the metal, and he lifted. Muscles bunched across his shoulders and arms. The beam groaned and shifted, rising inch by inch. "Move," Riven said. Just one word, but it cut through Sam's haze. Sam tried to pull his leg free, but it would not work right. Everything felt wrong and distant. His hands would not grip properly. Riven held the beam with one arm. Impossible, but he did it. His other hand reached down. "Take my hand," the Kravik said. Sam's training screamed at him. Never touch. One touch means death. Everyone knew that. Everyone. But he was dying anyway. The vapor filled his vision and his lungs burned and nothing made sense anymore. Sam reached up and grabbed Riven's hand. The skin was warm and rough, like leather that had been left in the sun. The fingers closed around Sam's arm, gentle despite their size and strength. Riven pulled, and Sam came free of the beam. Then the Kravik was moving, carrying Sam against his chest like he weighed nothing at all. Sam waited to feel the poison, waited for the burning, the convulsions, the death that everyone promised would come from Kravik touch. Nothing happened. Riven ran through the tunnels, his breathing steady even as he carried Sam and navigated the maze of passages. He seemed to know exactly where to go, turning at intersections without hesitation. The vapor thinned. The air grew clearer. They burst through a maintenance door into a main corridor. People scattered, screaming. Security officers appeared with weapons drawn, shouting commands. Riven set Sam down carefully on the floor, then stepped back with his hands raised. The metal bands on his wrists flashed faster now, red lights strobing urgently. "The child needs medical attention," Riven said, his voice steady. The coolant leak affected his lungs. Medical teams rushed forward with a stretcher. Hands grabbed Sam, pulling him away from the Kravik. Voices asked questions he could not follow. Everything spun. The last thing Sam saw before they carried him away was Riven, surrounded by security officers with raised weapons, standing perfectly still as they backed him against the wall that he had touched Sam. Held him, saved him, and Sam was still alive. Somewhere in the confusion, someone was shouting about impossible things and protocol violations. Someone else was calling for a medical quarantine. But Sam knew the truth that his hazy mind could barely hold on to. Everything they said about the Kravik was wrong. Everything. The medical bay lights were too bright. Sam closed his eyes and let the doctors work, his hand still warm where Riven had held it. Dr. Oren Fell had been a physician for 32 years. He had treated radiation burns, explosive decompression, and 17 different kinds of alien parasites. Nothing in his career had prepared him for this. Sam lay on the medical bed, breathing clearly. His oxygen levels were normal. His tissue scans showed minor damage from coolant exposure, already healing. By every measure, he should be dead or dying from Kravik venom. Instead, he was asking for pudding. "Run the tests again," Fell told his assistant. "There must be contamination in the samples." But the test came back the same. No venom, no toxins. No sign that Sam had ever been touched by the most dangerous predator species in the known galaxy. That Sam's parents sat beside his bed, holding his hands and crying. Relief mixed with confusion, mixed with lingering fear. Their son was alive, but the world had just stopped making sense that in a holding room 3 levels down, Riven sat alone. Security cameras watched his every movement. 2 guards stood outside the sealed door, weapons ready. Captain Helena Cross stood in the observation room, her arms crossed, studying the Kravik through the one-way glass. "Explain it to me again," she said to Fell, who had just arrived with his test results. "There is nothing to explain," Fell replied. "The boy has no injuries consistent with Kravik venom exposure. No cellular damage. No neurotoxin markers. Nothing. That is impossible. I am aware." Cross turned from the window. "Kravik touch is lethal. That is documented fact. We have reports from the border wars. Soldiers who brushed against them in combat and died within minutes. Then, perhaps," Fell said quietly, "our reports were incomplete." The door to Riven's holding room opened. Cross entered alone, leaving the guards outside. Riven did not move from where he sat, his hands resting on the metal table. The restraint bands on his wrists had been joined by additional security measures. Heavier bands around his ankles. A monitor collar around his neck. "You save a child today," Cross said. "Yes." "By touching him. Carrying him. Direct skin contact." "Yes." "And he lives." Riven's dark eyes met hers. "As you can see," Cross sat down across from him. "Everyone believes that Kravik touch is lethal. We have built our entire security protocol around that fact. Now you are telling me it was a lie." "Not a lie," Riven said slowly. "A weapon." He lifted his hands. The ridges along his forearms were visible under his skin, darker lines that ran from wrist to elbow. "We have venom sacs. That much is true. And spines that can deploy from beneath the skin. But they must be triggered. extended deliberately. It is not automatic, not constant. Then why did everyone believe otherwise? Because fear is more powerful than truth. Riven lowered his hands. During the wars, we let the enemy believe that any contact would mean death. It made them hesitate, made them afraid to engage in close combat where our strength gave us advantage. The legend grew with each battle. The deadly touch of the Kravik. You let us believe you were monsters. I am a monster, Riven said quietly. I have killed many, but not with a touch. With intent. Cross leaned back in her chair. Why did you not correct this? 3 years you've been here, walking your paths, isolated and alone. You could have told us the truth at any time. Riven was silent for a long moment. After the war ended, after my people surrendered, I thought isolation was safer. If people feared to touch me, they would not try to hurt me. They would keep their distance. It was easier than risking their hate getting close enough to matter. So you chose loneliness over risk. Yes. The door opened. Sam's parents entered, followed by Sam himself in a wheelchair pushed by a nurse. His mother's eyes were red from crying. His father looked between Riven and Cross, uncertain. We wanted to thank you, Sam's mother said, her voice shaking. You saved our son. Riven nodded, but said nothing. Sam wheeled himself forward, waving the nurse away. He stopped a meter from Riven's chair. Why did you save me if you wanted everyone to stay away? The question hung in the air. Because no one should die alone and afraid, Riven finally said. I know what that feels like. I will not wish it on anyone, not even myself. Sam studied the Kravik's face. You have been alone for 3 years. Yes. That is a long time. Yes. Sam glanced at his parents, then back to Riven. Can we be friends? His mother gasped. His father started to object. But Sam kept his eyes on Riven, waiting. Riven stared at the small human child who had just asked the question no one else had asked in 3 years. A child who should have been afraid, who had every reason to fear, but instead offered friendship. I do not know how to be a friend, Riven admitted. Me neither, Sam said, grinning. I mostly just read books and explore maintenance tunnels. But maybe we could figure out together. Cross watched the exchange with something like wonder crossing her professional expression. This was not in any manual. There was no protocol for this. The security review will take time, Cross said carefully. But perhaps supervised visits could be arranged. Sam's parents looked at each other. Fear and gratitude warred on their faces. But they had raised their son to be kind, to see beyond surfaces. They could not now punish him for being exactly what they taught him to be. Supervised, his father said firmly. And brief. Deal, Sam said immediately. For the first time in 3 years, something changed in Riven's expression. The sadness did not disappear, but it was joined by something else. Something small and fragile and unexpected. Hope. 3 weeks passed before the station began to feel different. Sam visited Riven every afternoon after his lessons. They met in a common room under the watchful eyes of a security officer who slowly grew bored enough to read instead of stare. Sam brought books and games. Riven shared stories of his home world, a jungle planet where the trees grew so tall they blocked out the sun and predators hunted from every direction. We learned to be strong because we had to be, Riven explained, moving a game piece across the board between them. Weakness meant death. Hesitation meant death. So we became what we needed to survive. That sounds lonely, Sam said. Riven paused, his large hand hovering over the game board. I never thought of it that way. But yes, it was lonely. Others began to notice. At first they watched from a distance, still wary. A Kravik and a human child playing games and talking like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. The impossible made casual that a young Centauran scientist named Lyra was the first to approach. She waited until Sam had left, then knocked hesitantly on the open door. The security guard glanced up from his book but did not object. May I speak with you? Lyra asked, her voice uncertain. Riven nodded. She sat down across from him, her 4-fingered hands clasped nervously. I study biology, comparative anatomy across species. I wondered if you might be willing to answer some questions about Kravik physiology. You wish to study me. I wish to understand, Lyra corrected. There is a difference. Over the next hour, she asked careful questions. Riven answered them, explaining how his people's bodies worked, how their venom was produced and stored, how the spines could extend and retract through muscular control. Lyra took notes with growing excitement. "This is remarkable," she said. "Your people are not so different from other species with defensive adaptations. Many creatures have venom that requires deliberate deployment, but the fear made everyone assume you were always dangerous." "Fear often makes people assume the worst," Riven said. Word spread through the station's scientific community. More researchers requested meetings. Medical staff wanted to understand Krovic biology for emergency protocols. Engineers were curious about how Krovic strength compared to hydraulic systems. Riven found himself speaking to more people in a month than he had in 3 years. The containment protocols were officially revised. The metal bands remained on Riven's wrists, but they were changed from restraints to monitors. The yellow safe zone lines were erased from the corridor floors. He could walk where he wanted now, though he still moved carefully, aware that trust was fragile. Children were the bravest. Sam's friendship had shown them something their parents had forgotten. One day, a group of young ones stood across the corridor from where Riven sat reading. They whispered among themselves, daring each other. Finally, the smallest one, a Centauran girl barely old enough to walk steady, broke free from the group and waved. Riven slowly raised his hand and waved back. The children scattered, giggling, but the next day they were back. This time they all waved. Sam taught Riven human games. Riven taught Sam about honor and responsibility. They made an odd pair, the massive predator and the small boy, but somehow it worked. "My people believe that strength is everything," Riven said one day. They sat in the observation deck, watching ships drift past the windows. "But I think humans understand a different kind of strength." "What kind?" Sam asked. "The strength to be kind when you could be cruel, to trust when you could fear, to reach out when others pull away." Riven looked down at Sam. "You showed me that strength." A message came through on Captain Cross's private channel. She read it twice, then called Riven to her office that he entered alone, though Sam waited outside with crossed arms, ready to defend his friend if needed. Cross almost smiled at the boy's fierce loyalty. "We have located 3 more Krovic survivors," Cross said without preamble. "They are requesting asylum at this station." Riven went very still. 3. 2 warriors and 1 civilian. "They are afraid. They have been hiding for years, just as you did. They heard rumors that a Krovic lives freely here and wanted to know if it was true." "It is not entirely free," Riven said, touching the monitor bands on his wrists. "Freer than you were," Cross countered, "and freer than they are now." She leaned forward. "They will arrive in 4 days. I need to know if you will help them adjust. Help them understand that isolation is not the only option." Riven thought of the last 3 years. The endless walking alone. The silence broken only by his own thoughts. The careful distance he kept from every living thing. Then he thought of Sam's question, "Can we be friends?" "I will help them," Riven said. Sam was waiting when Riven emerged from the office. What did she want? "More of my people are coming. They need help." Sam grinned. "That is great. You will not be the only Krovic anymore." "No," Riven agreed. "But I am worried they will not want to change. My people are proud. Accepting help, showing vulnerability, making friends with other species. These things go against everything we were taught." "Then you will teach them something new," Sam said simply. "Just like you taught me that scary looking does not mean bad." For days later, the transport arrived. 3 Krovic disembarked in the docking bay, surrounded by nervous security personnel. 2 were warriors, male and female, with the same powerful build as Riven. The 3rd was smaller, younger, with intelligent eyes that darted everywhere. Riven stood waiting, Sam beside him despite his parents' protests. The female warrior, Shale, saw Riven first. Her eyes widened. "No distrans." "Only monitors," Riven said. "Things are different here." The male warrior, Garrick, snorted. "Different how? They still fear us." "Some do," Riven admitted. "But fear can change." He gestured to Sam. The small human boy stepped forward and held out his hand. "Welcome to the station. Aim Sam." The 3 newcomers stared at the offered hand like it was a bomb. The youngest Krovic, Nira, reached out slowly and shook Sam's hand. Her grip was careful, controlled. Sam smiled. Garak made a disgusted sound. "This is weakness. This is survival," Riven countered. The integration did not go smoothly. Garak and Shale refused to follow Riven's example. They kept to themselves, walking the station with the same rigid pride that Kravik warriors had always shown. They did not speak to other species unless required. They did not explain that their touch was not always deadly. They let the fear continue because fear meant respect, and respect meant safety. Or so they believed. 2 weeks after their arrival, a Centauran diplomat named Orson was walking through a junction corridor. Garak turned the corner at the same moment. They nearly collided. Orson stumbled backward in panic. Garak's spines extended reflexively, breaking through the skin of his forearms in a defensive display. Orson screamed and ran. Security arrived within minutes. Weapons drawn, voices shouting commands. Garak stood in the center of the corridor with his spines still visible, breathing hard, surrounded by fear and anger. T took Captain Cross and Riven both to calm the situation. No one had been hurt. Garak had not attacked, but the damage was done. Trust, already fragile, cracked. "This is exactly what I warned you about," Cross said to Riven in her office afterward. "Your people are dangerous, not because of venom, but because they cannot control their reactions." He was startled, Riven argued. "It was an accident. Accidents can kill people." Cross pulled up security footage from the incident. "Look at this. The diplomat did nothing wrong. He was just walking. But your friend there extended weapons in the middle of a public corridor. Because he was afraid," Riven said quietly. "So is everyone else." The station council met the next day. They debated new restrictions. Mandatory containment zone, limited movement. Some voices called for deportation of all Kravik except Riven, who had proven himself. Sam heard about the meeting from his parents. He did not wait for permission. He went straight to the council chambers and waited outside until they took a break. When the council members emerged, Sam was standing there. Captain Cross saw him first. "You should not be here, Sam. I need to speak to the council. This is official business. About my friend. That makes it my business, too." Cross studied the determined boy. Against her better judgment, she smiled. 5 minutes. That is all I can give you." Sam entered the council chamber. 12 representatives from different species sat around a curved table. They looked surprised to see a child, but Cross vouched for him and they allowed him to speak. Sam stood in the center of the room and took a deep breath. "You want to send them away because you are afraid. I understand that. I was afraid too. Everyone told me Kravik were monsters who killed with a touch. But then Riven saved my life and I learned the truth." A council member interrupted. "We know you have befriended one Kravik, but the incident with diplomat Orson proves they are still dangerous." Garak extended his spines because he was scared, Sam said. Not because he wanted to hurt anyone. He's been hiding and running for years. Everyone he meets is either afraid of him or wants to kill him. So when someone suddenly appeared in front of him, his body reacted. That is not evil. That is just fear. Another council member spoke up. "What do you suggest we do? Ignore the danger?" "No. Teach them that they do not need to be afraid here. Show them what Riven learned. That being strong does not mean being alone. That trust is possible." Sam looked around the room. "Riven has been here for 3 years and never hurt anyone. He saved my life. He talks to scientists and plays games with kids and helps engineers understand his people. He changed because someone gave him a chance." "You gave him a chance," Cross said softly. "And now we need to give the others the same chance," Sam finished. "Please, do not send them away before they learn there is another way to live." The council deliberated for 2 hours. Sam waited outside with Riven, who had been summoned partway through. "You did not need to speak for us," Riven said. "Yes, I did. You're my friend. Friends help each other." The council emerged with their decision. Garak, Shale, and Nero would not be deported, but they would be required to participate in integration programs, cultural exchange sessions, supervised interactions with other species. They would learn that the station was not a battlefield, and its residents were not enemies. Garak hated it at first. He sat through the sessions with his arms crossed and his expression dark. But slowly, grudgingly, he began to understand. Shale was quicker to adapt. She started working with the security teams, teaching them combat techniques in exchange for learning station protocols. Her strength became an asset rather than a threat. Nira bloomed. She joined the science division, sharing knowledge of Kravic biology and culture that had never been recorded. She made friends easily, her curiosity overcoming her people's traditional reserve. One day, a month after the incident, Garak found Sam in the observation deck. "The child who spoke to the council," Garak said. His voice was gruff, uncomfortable. "That is me. Why did you defend us? We are not your people." Sam looked up at the massive warrior. "Riven told me something once. He said that no one should die alone and afraid. I think that also means no one should live alone and afraid. You were afraid. I wanted to help." Garak stared at the small human for a long moment. Then, slowly, he extended his hand. "No spines. Just an open palm." Sam shook it. "Thank you," Garak said quietly, "for seeing us as more than monsters." "You are welcome," Sam replied. "Now, do you want to learn how to play cards? Riven is terrible at it." From across the deck, Riven's voice called out. "I heard that." Garak's expression shifted. It might have been a smile. 6 months changed everything. The station still hummed with the sounds of 100 different species going about their lives, but now those sounds included Kravic voices. Riven led a new division within station security, the Peacekeeping Corps. The name had been Nir's idea. Not police, not guards, peacekeepers. The logic was simple but effective. Kravic were still intimidating. Their size and strength and reputation made people think twice about causing trouble. But now that intimidation served a purpose beyond fear, it prevented conflicts instead of causing them. Garak and Shale wore uniforms with the station insignia on their shoulders. They walked patrol routes alongside officers from a dozen other species. Arguments broke up quickly when a 3-meter Kravic warrior politely asked everyone to calm down. Somehow people listened. "It is strange," Shale said to Riven one day. They stood in the security office, reviewing the day's reports. "We are doing the same thing we always did, using our strength. But it feels different. Because we are protecting instead of fighting," Riven replied. Purpose changes everything. Nira had become something of a celebrity in the science division. Her research papers on cross-species cooperation were being read throughout the coalition. She argued that fear often came from ignorance, and ignorance could be cured with conversation. Her work attracted other Kravic who had been hiding throughout the galaxy. They came slowly at first, one every few weeks, then more. Within 6 months, 23 Kravic lived on the station. They were not all warriors. Some were engineers. Some were artists. One was a chef who specialized in combining Kravic cuisine with other species' recipes. His restaurant became surprisingly popular. Sam still met Riven every afternoon. Their friendship had become normal, just another part of station life. Today they sat in the observation deck with a holographic chess set between them. "Your move," Sam said. Riven studied the board. His tactical mind saw 3 possible strategies, each with their own risks. He chose the most aggressive one, moving his warrior piece forward. Sam immediately countered, trapping the piece. "You always attack. Sometimes defense is smarter. Kravic do not defend. We strike first. Maybe that is why you keep losing." Riven rumbled with laughter. The sound still surprised people who heard it. A Kravic laughing was not something the galaxy had seen before. Sam. An alarm cut through the moment. Not the emergency kind, just an alert. Captain Cross's voice came over the station speakers. "All peacekeeping personnel report to Docking Bay 3. We have a situation." Riven stood immediately. Sam started to follow, but Riven shook his head. "Stay here. This is official business." "Be careful," Sam said. Docking Bay 3 was in controlled chaos when Riven arrived. A civilian transport had sent a distress call. Pirates had attacked them just outside the station's patrol zone. The transport was damaged, but had managed to escape and limp to the station. Now the pirates were following, demanding the transport surrender its cargo. Captain Cross stood at the command console, surrounded by security officers. "They will be here in 10 minutes." We have defense systems, but the transport is in the way. If we fire, we might hit civilians. Send the Corps, Riven said, cross-turned. This is a combat situation. Exactly. Riven called up a tactical display. We launch in a security shuttle. Position ourselves between the pirates and the transport. We do not need a fight. Just make them reconsider. You want to intimidate them. It has worked before. Cross considered for exactly 3 seconds. Go. But Riven, if they attack, you defend yourselves. That is an order. The peacekeeping shuttle launched with Riven, Garrick, Shale, and 2 other officers aboard. They reached the transport within minutes and positioned their shuttle directly in the pirates' path. The pirate ship was smaller but heavily armed. It slowed as it approached, scanning the peacekeeping shuttle. Riven opened a communication channel. His face appeared on the pirate captain's screen. The captain was a Vorash, all scales and sharp teeth and predatory confidence. That confidence wavered when he saw what faced him. This is Riven of the Peacekeeping Corps. The transport you are pursuing is under coalition protection. You will leave this space immediately. The Vorash captain laughed nervously. One shuttle? You expect us to run from one shuttle? Garrick leaned into the camera view. Then Shale. Then the other 2 Kravik officers. For the galaxy's most feared predators, all staring at the pirate captain with calm, patient expressions. Yes, Riven said simply. We expect exactly that. The pirate ship turned and fled without firing a single shot. Back on the station, the rescued civilians thanked the peacekeeping team with tears and grateful words. The transport captain, an elderly Centauran woman, gripped Riven's hand tightly. I remember the border wars, she said. I remember when Kravik were the enemy. Never thought I would be saved by one. Times change, Riven said. People change. That evening, Sam found Riven in the observation deck. The usual spot. The stars beyond the window seemed brighter somehow. I heard what happened, Sam said. You saved those people without even fighting. Sometimes the threat of strength is enough. You taught me that strength can be gentle. I did. You did. Riven looked down at his young friend. A year ago, I walked these corridors alone. I believed isolation was safety. That distance was strength. I was wrong about everything. Not everything, Sam said. You were right that no one should die alone and afraid. Yes, and no one should live that way either. A new ship approached the station, its engines glowing in the dark. Another transport bringing more people, more cargo, more stories. The station grew and changed every day, just like the people who live there. Do you ever miss your homeworld? Sam asked. Riven thought about the jungle planet where he was born. The endless fights for survival. The lonely existence of a predator with no peers. Sometimes, but this is home now. Because of the other Kravik? Because of you, Riven said honestly. You saw past the monster and found the person. You gave me a chance when you had every reason to be afraid. That changed everything. Sam grinned. Want to play another game of chess? Only if you promise not to mock my strategy. No promises. They set up the holographic board again, teacher and student, friend and friend. Around them, the station lived and breathed. Kravik walked freely among other species. Children waved without fear. Trust grew where terror had been. All because one kid had the courage to save an apex predator. And in return,